China is building sedans with no rear window, SUVs that can float themselves out of deep water, and performance EVs that can literally jump. These are 10 of the most insane Chinese futuristic cars. Number 10, the XPeng P7. Here's why the XPeng P7 is such a sneaky problem for everybody else. It takes one of the most expensive feeling parts of modern car tech, advanced urban driver assistance, and drops it into a car that doesn't act like it should be this capable. You know how a lot of assist systems feel confident only when the road is empty, the lines are clear, and nobody around you is doing anything stupid? Yeah, that's not real life. The P7 is built for actual chaos. Tight traffic, blind spots, sudden cut-ins, random braking, weird city movement. All the stuff that exposes whether a car is actually smart or just pretending. XPeng throws high-resolution cameras, millimeter-wave radar, a full 360-degree sensing setup, and faster onboard processing at that problem so the car can read more and react quicker. That's what makes it interesting. It doesn't just watch the world, it keeps up with it. And once a car starts feeling calm in situations that usually make you tense up, your standards change fast. That's the P7's real trick. It makes high-level driver tech feel less like a luxury flex and more like something you should already have by now. Number 9, the Zeekr 007. If charging time is still the thing making you hesitate on EVs, the Zeekr 007 shows up with the energy of somebody who's already tired of hearing that excuse. The whole conversation starts with the 800-volt architecture. That sounds like one of those spec sheet details that engineers care about and normal people ignore until you hear the actual result. Add 379 miles of range in 15 minutes, and suddenly road trips stop feeling like charger math and start feeling normal again. That's already enough to get your attention. Then, Zeekr adds the Stargate front light strip, which is not just there to look futuristic, even though it absolutely does. It can also communicate status and intent to the outside world, which means the front of the car stops being just styling and starts becoming part of the interface. And then, because apparently that still wasn't enough, the dual-motor version does 0 to 60 in 2.84 seconds. So now you've got fast charging, real speed, and battery tech designed to stay safer under serious heat and impact. The 007 doesn't just solve one problem, it solves 3 at once, then makes the whole thing look like it was easy. Number 8, the IM Motors L7. The IM Motors L7 is for you if you like the idea of a big luxury sedan, but hate the part where big luxury sedans sometimes move like they're asking permission from the road. This thing fixes that with 4-wheel steering, and the difference is immediate. Suddenly, this long, full-size car can tighten its turning radius, slide through tighter spaces, and even do crab-style maneuvers that make parking feel way less annoying than it should. That alone is cool, but the smarter part is what's happening underneath. The chassis uses AI-driven tuning that reads the road in milliseconds and adjusts on the fly, which means it can smooth out rough surfaces without letting the body go soft and floaty. So on the highway, it feels planted, expensive, and calm, but in town, it feels smaller and sharper than its size suggests. Then inside, the 39-inch triple-screen setup doesn't just look flashy. It helps show you what the driving system is actually seeing in real time. That's a great touch because the intelligence isn't hiding in the background. It becomes part of the whole experience. The L7 basically gives you executive sedan comfort and then quietly teaches it how to move like it's had espresso. Number 7, the Avatar 12. This is the car that looked at the rear window and said, "Do we really still need this?" And the annoying part is, once you hear the logic, it actually makes sense. By deleting the rear glass, the Avatar 12 cleans up the roofline, improves aerodynamics, and opens up more usable cargo space than a normal sedan layout usually gives you. Instead of a conventional rear view, you get a high-definition, low-latency camera system feeding a digital mirror. That sounds a little weird at first, sure, but then you remember how often a normal rear window is already half blocked by pillars, glare, headrests, bad weather, or whatever somebody tossed in the back. So suddenly, the digital solution starts sounding like the more grown-up answer. Then, the rest of the car leans into that same future-first mindset. Huawei's ADS 2.0 handles the smart driving side, Harmony OS runs the cockpit, and the cabin feels less like a traditional luxury car and more like a sleek digital lounge you happen to drive. Add a dual-motor setup and around 700 kilometers of range, and the Avatar 12 stops feeling experimental. It feels like a car from 5 years ahead that showed up early just to make everybody else uncomfortable. Number 6, the Hi-Fi Z. The Hi-Fi Z doesn't drive by quietly. It makes an entrance, and honestly, it knows exactly what it's doing. This thing looks like it came straight out of a cyberpunk movie and then refused to tone itself down for production. But the part that makes it really fun is that the engineering backs up the attitude. On the outside, you get programmable matrix lighting and the Star Ring ISD light curtain on the doors. Those aren't just flashy LEDs for the sake of drama. They can actually display messages, warnings, and battery information to people around the car, which means the vehicle is actively communicating instead of just sitting there looking expensive. Then you get inside and it somehow gets even more extra. The main infotainment screen sits on a robotic arm that pivots and tilts toward whoever's using it, driver or passenger, so the whole cabin feels responsive in a very physical way. That's such a ridiculous flex, but it works. And the best part is, this isn't just a weird gadget on wheels. It still gets rear steering and performance damping, so it moves with way more agility than a machine this dramatic should probably have. The Hi-Fi Z feels like a robot that learned social skills and then decided it also wanted to be fast. Number 5. The NIO ET9. The NIO ET9 feels like the point where this list stops playing around and starts quietly insulting the old luxury sedan formula. First, it runs a 900-volt electrical architecture, which means more efficient power delivery, lighter components, and the kind of underlying hardware that tells you this car was engineered with very serious intentions. But the part you're actually going to remember is the suspension. NIO's Skyride fully active setup has so much control that the ET9 can shake snow off its own body, stay impressively flat over bumps, and keep the cabin calm through corners in a way that makes it feel less like a sedan and more like some sort of ground-based private jet. Then there's steer-by-wire, which cuts out the old mechanical link and lets the system shape steering feel much more freely. That alone already sounds futuristic, but then NIO hits you with the real killer move, battery swapping. Pull in, get the old pack removed, get a fresh one installed, leave in around 5 minutes. That changes the whole long-distance EV experience. So the ET9 isn't just luxurious, it's strategic. It's the kind of car that makes you realize some companies are building vehicles, and some companies are building entire mobility systems. Number 4. The Xiaomi SU7. A phone company was not supposed to walk into the car world and do this on its first serious try. That's why the Xiaomi SU7 feels so disrespectful. Xiaomi didn't show up trying to make a decent beginner EV and slowly learn the business. It showed up trying to embarrass performance brands. This thing can do 0 to 60 in 1.98 seconds, with a motor spinning up to 21,000 revolutions per minute. That is not a warm-up. That is a statement. Then you see the drag coefficient, 0.195, and realize they got obsessive about airflow too. The car is incredibly slippery through the air, which helps explain why it feels so technically focused instead of just headline fast. But the bigger story is how naturally it fits into Xiaomi's software world. HyperOS lets the SU7 interact with smart home devices and connected products so smoothly that the car starts feeling like another screen in your life instead of some separate machine with its own weird logic. That's a huge deal because traditional automakers still tend to build cars like sealed islands. Xiaomi doesn't think that way. It thinks ecosystems, so the SU7 ends up feeling like two threats at once, a properly fast EV and a deeply integrated smart device that just happens to have 4 doors and a ridiculously quick launch. Number 3. The Lotus Eletre. The Lotus Eletre is really interesting because it solves one of the biggest problems future-facing cars still haven't fully figured out. How do you load a vehicle with sensors and computing power without making it look like somebody glued a science fair project to the roof? Lotus handles that with deployable LiDAR sensors that stay hidden flush in the body until they're needed. So you get the tech without wrecking the shape. That already feels smarter than the way a lot of rivals do it. Then, the body itself starts getting clever. The active grille uses triangular panels that open when the battery needs cooling and close when the car wants less drag, so the airflow is being actively managed instead of just passively accepted. That's very cool. Then Lotus throws in dual NVIDIA Orin X chips, nearly 900 horsepower, 48-volt active anti-roll bars, and sub 3-second acceleration, which means this big electric SUV has way more firepower than its size should comfortably be allowed. But that's really the whole appeal. The Eletre is trying to preserve Lotus Lotus DNA in a format that should feel too big, too heavy, and too digital. And somehow, against the odds, it still sounds alive. It doesn't just carry the future on board, it tries to make the future handle properly too. Number 2. The BYD Yangwang U8. This is the floating SUV. And yes, that still sounds made up, which is exactly why the Yangwang U8 hits so hard. It rides on BYD's E4 quad motor platform, with one motor at each wheel, and that completely changes how the vehicle thinks about movement. Because each corner gets its own precise control, the U8 doesn't need traditional differentials the way old-school off-roaders do. That's how it pulls off the tank turn, rotates within its own length, and manages traction with enough precision to stay controlled even after a tire blowout at 75 miles per hour. That's already wild. Then BYD goes further with emergency flotation mode. If the vehicle ends up in deep water, it can seal critical systems, use the sunroof as an emergency exit, and literally move itself by spinning the wheels while floating. At that point, you're not talking about normal SUV engineering anymore. You're talking about a machine that rethinks what safety, utility, and off-road intelligence can look like when software and hardware are working together at a much higher level. Add more than 1,100 horsepower, huge torque, and a proper luxury cabin, and the U8 feels less like an SUV with some impressive tricks and more like a new class of vehicle that showed up without asking anyone's permission. Number 1. The BYD Yangwang U9. The Yangwang U9 takes the top spot because it gives EV performance something a lot of electric hypercars still struggle to deliver: personality. Real, physical, slightly unhinged personality. The star of the whole thing is the Daisus X suspension system. It reacts so fast and with so much control that the car can literally jump from a standstill. Actually jump. Not a little bounce, not a gimmicky wiggle, an actual jump. And if that wasn't already enough, it can also keep driving on 3 wheels without scraping the rotor, which sounds like one of those fake internet claims until you realize this car really can do it. Then you add the 4-motor setup, more than 1,300 horsepower, and a 0 to 60 time in under 2 seconds. And yeah, the U9 is already terrifyingly quick. But what makes it number 1 is how integrated the whole machine is. BYD's Blade battery isn't just sitting there supplying power. It's built into the chassis structure, helping give the car the stiffness it needs to survive all that violent suspension movement without the whole thing twisting into chaos. That's why the U9 feels bigger than just another fast EV. It doesn't just go faster, it moves differently. It behaves differently. It makes electric performance feel dramatic again. So which one hits hardest for you? The U9 literally jumping? The U8 floating itself through deep water? The ET9 swapping batteries in 5 minutes? Or the SU7 showing up from a phone company and immediately trying to embarrass Porsche? Drop your pick in the comments and subscribe, because the next video is only going to make this one look tame.